Hey guys, it's Chelsea from Little Mountain Ranch. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be sharing with you something I'm really excited to share with you actually. Right now we're standing in my cold room and I've shown you this space a couple of times over the years, but today's tour is going to be a little bit different because right now this pantry I don't think it's ever been this full, nor has it ever been so diverse. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean about that in just a second. Last time we visited this space, I had my dry food storage, my bulk food in the pantry, or the space that I'd created into a pantry next door to here. And since that time, I've actually amalgamated both of those spaces. And the reason I've done that is because I'm going to be using the space that's next door here to make a grow room, which I'm really excited about. I was hoping I was going to be able to show it to you completed today, but the shelf that I ordered has not yet come in. One of the other things that I've been doing is really working on my long-term, basically my prepper pantry. What I mean by a prepper pantry is that there are things in this pantry now that will not be touched outside of an emergency. Up until this point, this pantry has been what I would call a working pantry. Basically, that would mean that I would use this as my grocery store, and then every 2 or 3 months I would replenish my stocks. But one of the disadvantages of doing that and having that kind of pantry, at least for us, is by the end of that 3 to 4 month period, the stocks in this would be really, really low. And if there were anything that were to happen that would prohibit us from being able to get to the grocery store, we'd be in pretty big trouble by the end of that period of time. This pantry isn't like that. Over the last couple of weeks, I have been working very hard to stock this pantry up with a lot of things that will only be used if and when there is an emergency. Basically, this pantry now has, and I'm going to give you a full tour in a couple of minutes, but it now has things in it that will not be touched outside of an emergency. I've experienced natural disasters in the past that have actually stopped us from being able to make it to the grocery store. In 2017, our family was evacuated from our property for 47 days for the forest fires. We had basically forest fire all the way around our ranch. My eldest son and my husband stayed home to look after the ranch during that period of time, and there were extended periods up to a couple of weeks that they weren't able to get to the grocery store. The town in which we get our groceries was actually evacuated as well, so all the grocery stores were closed, so there wasn't even the option to go. Fortunately, we did have quite a few things on hand, but my husband did say that roasts and potatoes did get a little bit old after about a week. So if we had had a pantry like this at that time, they would have had nothing to worry about and would have been eating quite well. Throughout this video, I'm going to give you some tips on the kinds of things that I would personally recommend having in your food storage. And then in upcoming videos, I'm going to show you how to cook with some of this food, because there are a lot of things that I have in my food storage, like beans and rice and things like that, that could get a little bit bland if you had to eat them all the time. But I found some really creative ways to cook with them that we actually have in our regular recipe rotation. This area over here has all of my canned goods. I moved this shelf from the pantry next door and brought it into this space, and it's just worked perfectly for storing my canned goods. I only have about 193 jars left, and I started the season out in October with 500, so we have chewed through quite a bit of this, but we do still have a lot of variety left on this shelf. I have lots of cowboy candy left. This is something I love, you guys. If you haven't had a chance to make cowboy candy, it is jalapenos in a sugary syrup. It has a bit of a vinegar taste, but it's more sweet and hot. So, so good. I have tons of salsa left, lots and lots of pickles, tons of honey, which is great. I still have another 6 months supply of honey, beets, lots of beans, pumpkin, tomatoes, relishes, more honey. So I'm feeling pretty good about having this much left at this time of year. I want to talk to you a little bit about the kinds of food that you're going to want to have in a more longer term pantry. You have to imagine that if you were not able to go to the grocery store for, say, even 2 weeks, how boring things like potatoes and rice and beans could get. But one of the things that can make a big difference on the way that those things taste are things like herbs and spices. The stuff that is on this shelf that you can see up here, This is primarily for long-term food storage. This is not stuff that I use on a regular basis. Things like pickling spice, home fried potatoes, roasted garlic and peppers, Montreal steak spice, Greek spice. The chili powder is something that I use regularly, and garlic powder over here. The stuff that you can see down on this shelf, this is more the stuff that I use on a regular basis. All of these jars are herbs that are from my garden. This one's rosemary, parsley, mint, basil, tarragon, hot peppers over here. This is the stuff that I'm going to use more on a regular basis, whereas this stuff is more the kind of stuff that I'm going to use to make bland food taste good. So down here, basically the same idea. This is all stuff that was on sale at the grocery store that I could get really cheap. So I just always buy little bags like this and then shove them in here. Over here, I have some sun-dried tomatoes. Garam masala, this is actually one that I would use more regularly. Cornstarch. And over here, a whole bunch of rose hips that we collected in the fall. So just keep in mind flavor when you're thinking long-term storage pantry. And like I said, a lot of those herbs and spices are not things that I would use in my kitchen regularly, but they were cheap and they store really well for a long time. So I bought those specifically for my long-term food storage. Okay, this is another example of the food like I was just talking about, things that we would normally not eat. This is pineapple, peaches, fruit salad. This is the kind of stuff that will make things like oatmeal, which you can see behind me here, I have lots of that stored, taste a whole lot better than just plain oatmeal. So these are things that we won't be touching outside of the need to. I am keeping an eye on all the expiration dates, and as we get close to those, we will eat them up and replace them, but they have a pretty good shelf life. All of these bins here are primarily dried beans and rice. I do have one bin over here that does have brown sugar in it. This one is kidney beans, black beans, brown rice down here, whole wheat flour, popcorn and navy beans, lentils and green peas down here, rice, and then another bin of whole wheat flour over on this side. I have several hundred pounds of each thing in these bins, and the nice thing is these shelves are really heavy duty. I would recommend, if you're looking to build a pantry similar to this one, to really keep in mind you want really heavy duty wood that can handle holding large bins like this. These bins fit absolutely perfectly in here. I didn't build these shelves. These were here when we moved in, but they must have done it with bins like this in mind because they fit perfectly. This is the kind of food that a lot of people look at and go, what in the heck are you gonna do with hundreds and hundreds of pounds of beans? But I would say we use rice 2 to 3 times a week. We also use beans at least twice a week in recipes, just in things like chili. I make a really good bean wrap. Baked beans, there's lots of ways to use beans that are actually really good that my kids will eat. The beans here are for both long-term and short-term use. I pretty much always keep these bins full. I don't really let my bean and rice stocks drop down too much. As soon as they do, I order a whole bunch more. These are the squash that I have left over. I think there's about 42 and I started with 200. Maybe somebody can remember. I think it was 240 or something like that. If you want to grow squash, these are definitely some squash to consider because they're super good storage squashes. Any kind of spaghetti squash will store forever. I think it's February 22nd today, and these are still in excellent shape and they taste really good. These small sugar pumpkins are just starting to turn now. They stored really, really well for me this year. I will link all the varieties and where I get my seeds down below in the description box if you want to check them out. Squash also did really well. This is called an early wonder. What else? This was a different variety of spaghetti squash, a yellow one, also did really well. But all of my buttercup squash have now gone to the chickens. Pretty much every single one of them rotted. Oh, I do have a Cinderella pumpkin in the back there, but I'm just gonna leave it in the back. That's also another really good one. Okay, down over here, I have a couple of more bags of beans that are just sitting on the counter and a whole bunch more flour up here. I actually need to go buy a couple of more of those Rubbermaid bins that I was showing you earlier to put these in. This area of my pantry is definitely more of the things that we use on a regular basis. Except for these two sauces here, I'm actually going to move these to a different location. I make my own barbecue sauce, and I have for years, but I did buy 1 jug of barbecue sauce, and this is for my long-term food storage. I also bought a sweet and spicy. I have never actually bought either of these products before, but again, keeping in mind the way food is going to taste if you had to eat it over a long period of time, I think flavor is important. It's more of a morale booster than it is anything else. I also have some mayonnaise here. I have 7 jugs of olive oil. I use olive oil quite frequently. I also have lots of ketchup. Ketchup is one of those things that I do buy, although it is not a healthy condiment at all. It's full of sugar. But I have found in raising kids, you can only be so, vigilant around what goes in their mouths. It's really easy to do when they're young, but once they hit the teen years and they're eating food at other people's houses and stuff like that, chances are they're going to want some of the junk sometimes. It's one of the food products that I just tend to overlook, the fact that it's mostly sugar. Down over here, I have hemp hearts. We use these in smoothies and on cereal and oatmeal. In behind, I have cocoa powder. This is a really good thing to have on hand because you can make a lot of different things taste really yummy with just a teaspoon of cocoa powder. Lots of cornmeal I have. I think I have about 6 jars like this of cornmeal and then 1 large one. That's one of the things I could use some more of actually. Up over here, I have some mustard, tahini, nutritional yeast, whole bunch of apple cider vinegar, liquid soy seasoning. This is another thing that if you can buy in bulk, it's something that will make rice taste good. So I have a year's supply of Bragg's. Peanut butter, super good source of protein, and it can make lots of things. Even sliced up apple taste a lot better and be a lot more filling. Up here, some baking soda, icing sugar, vanilla, matcha tea, fancy molasses, baking soda and baking powder. You guys all know I am a tea junkie, so this is my tea section in here. Up at the top, this is more the kinds of things that we are not touching unless we absolutely needed to. This is just a restaurant grade paper towel. I would be using these, like say we had an illness in the house or something like that, I would pull out a roll for drying hands on after going to the washroom rather than using like reusing towels. Dish soap, that is, so this dish soap is dish soap that doesn't get touched or used for daily use. This is just for in case of emergency. Same with garbage bags, light bulbs, and toilet paper. One of the other things that I have stored in this space is all of my medical supplies in these boxes along here. I would really like to encourage as many people as I possibly can to store food. You don't have to have a pantry like this. Not everybody has 11 kids like I do, and you don't necessarily have to have a massive prepper pantry. I know a pantry like this can seem really overwhelming, but keep in mind that I've been working on this pantry for at least 4 years now. Growing food is something that I've done for a really long time, but really learning to store food like this has been a really long process for me. So don't let that overwhelm you. But even if you just start picking up little 1 pound plastic bags of like beans or rice, get a 5-gallon bucket with a lid and just put them in there. Just leave them in their original packages, put them in there, put the lid on, stick it in a closet and forget about it. And just do that every time you go grocery shopping. You can get little bags like that. I've heard people say even at the dollar store and I promise you that the mental sort of, I don't know, security that it will give you will be absolutely worth it. And that doesn't mean you need to jump right on the prepper bandwagon or anything like that. Just a little bit of food security can go a long way for emotional and mental security. And that way, if you ever did need it, it would be there for you. And that's something that would make me feel so much better if I knew that more people were thinking about food storage a little bit more. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button and consider subscribing if you haven't subscribed already and you would like to see more content like this, homesteading kind of content. I would love to have you here as part of this community. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.